So very, very warm welcome. We're recording, yeah. Very warm welcome, everybody, to this first of, I think altogether we've got 7 Saturday morning teachings on practice bodhicitta, which is pretty much the same as saying on the 6 Paramita. So it's a wonderful topic. I'm very happy to see you here and feel very humbled to give these teachings on it, but also very happy and very privileged. So let's start, as we always do, let's start by spending this hour and a half together of karma making with an excellent motivation. So we make really good karma, and so that our motivation opens our hearts, opens our ears, so that we really let in the teachings of the Buddha. So we turn our hearts in loving care to everybody, and especially to our own parents and all of those in our lives who have figured prominently, for the better, for the worst, doesn't matter. They are very important part of our karma. And so it's very important that we take them with us in our refuge and in our journey, as bodhicitta is about, to enlightenment. As we grow and develop and we become the bus driver with passengers on board our bus to enlightenment, then those who are connected with us in this life will certainly be, let's hope, among the passengers. So anyway, let's do a few prayers. Sonje chodan soje chonamla chancho padun dane chapsunje dage jinso jipe sanamji trola penchira sonje druparasho sonje chodan soje chonamla chancho padun dane chapsunje dage jinso jipe sanamji Drola penchara sonje droparasho. Sonje chodang soje chonamla. Jancho bado dane chapsunche. Dagye jinso jipe sanamje. Drola penchara sonje droparasho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe jodang dempara joche. Dongal dang dongal je judang tralwara joche. Dongal me pe dewa tampa dang men tralwara joche. Nyeren chadan ne tang tralwe tanyom chempola ne para joche. Adeyata shame shamavate shamita shachom kore marazite karota ke orita jovate oloyane bishuda nimale malabana ye kukure kaka grasana om mukhi paramukhi amukhi shametane sawagraha bandhanane nekri eta savapara Prawadina Vimukta Marapasha Satapita Buddha Mudra Anugatita Savamare Butsarita Parishude Vegasantu Savamara Kama. Palen Sawe Lama Rinpoche Adagye Chewara Pende Denshola Kadren Chempo Gone Jezonte Kuson Toche Gadrop Salto Sol. Well, where to start? Teachings are funny. We get teachings on this topic or on that topic, and it kind of picks up somewhere in our journey. assuming that we've already digested whatever came before. And of course, it all starts with refuge. And after all my years, I've realized I'm not even sure I've taken refuge that well yet, let alone any of the other stuff. My surrender to what is greater, and all of that. But anyway, needs must. It's my job now to give talk about the 6 paramitas. So everything that came before, our 2 sessions on an overview of bodhicitta, our 1 session last time, 2 weeks ago, on Aspiration Bodhicitta, I have to assume that all of those are in place, and I have to resist the temptation to go back and try and sum it all up quickly, because we just don't have the time. So now we're in practice bodhicitta. Let's take that as a title rather than the subtitle, the 6 paramita. We saw in the overview that our bodhicitta has the aspiration. Now, in one of the great Mahayana traditions, it says, this is like the wish to go somewhere. Aspiration, the wish to go. So it's about our mind, training the mind, as we saw, not to exclude any beings, to avoid the 4 dark actions, practice the 4 bright actions, and so on and so on. We're training our mind, our aspiration. It's like the wish to go somewhere. So imagine you're going somewhere. You're planning the trip of a lifetime somewhere. Let's say Nepal. Could be anywhere, but let's say Nepal. You've never been anywhere like it. And so you've got the travel brochures, you've read lots of things, people's own experience, what to do, what not to do. And then as the reality of it's coming closer, you've worked, you've got the cash to go there, which airline you're going to fly, and then do you need a rucksack? What sort of a rucksack? What sort of medicines do you need to take? Might you get diarrhea? All of the sort of things practically you need to sort out, so that when you actually leave home, your trip is going to work for the best. All of that takes place in the preparation in your mind. So in Aspiration Bodhicitta, we are awakening. Awakening is an important word. It's bodhicitta. Bodhi means awakening. Awakening our citta, our heart, our mind, to what's going on. We've taken our mind out of its daily absorptions that started from the moment we were born, even before. There's life and you have to cope with it from day one. And then gradually it becomes familiar, you get educated, you grow up. It's all encompassing. Full Dolby surround, stereo, IMAX, life in all of its vivid intensity. And then somehow, through the power of past promises, through the power of past karma, through the power of our own Buddha nature, through the power of meeting the teachings and teachers, we get the bigger picture. There's not just this life. We've had many lives. And there's suffering. And it can be avoided. And there's loving care for our fellow beings. There are noble qualities of mind, and so on and so on. So gradually we get some perspective. We're no longer fully immersed like a child in front of a TV set, completely gone and crying its heart out when it's sad and laughing when it's funny. We're like an adult watching a film. There's life, of course. We have to live it. We made our own life. We did all the things that determine this life we're living every day, made our choices, things happened. But our perspective has changed. And we've understood, and we're understanding more what Buddha did. How amazing. And that it all comes down to an inner work with outer repercussions. You work on everything you are, your thoughts, your feelings, your imagination, your history, everything that makes you you. And you work on that until everything's pure. until everything is at peace, until love above anything else, loving compassion, dominates every moment, and then you're Buddha. So we've set our hearts on enlightenment. We have planned this journey. Our hearts are longing to go on the journey. So now, even though you're still toddling around wherever it is, Streatham or somewhere in London, your mind is in Nepal already, if that's where you're going. I remember when Akon Rinpoche was alive, he used to go off for 5 months in Tibet, and I used to help him prepare. And really the last 2 weeks before he left, although he was dealing with current business and still seeing people and giving advice, already there was so much to set in place, planning for this long and complicated trip at more than 100 destinations, that his mind was there. So now, once we've awoken to this immensity of our own potential, what we could be, what we will be, Bodhisattva, and then a Buddha, then we have to, so that's like the wish to go. Then practice bodhicitta is like the actual going. How are you going to do it? When we studied our 3 types of Buddhist, our 3 types of precious human existence, we saw that types 1 and 2 don't have the bodhicitta. We saw the Shravakas, they choose to care for themselves beautifully by extracting themselves from all of the mechanisms of suffering, samsara. In that process of extraction, they are not going to be engaging with life. By its very definition, that life is one of withdrawal. Withdrawal from everything that life is: home, possessions, interest in food and stuff and human relationships, and leave all that. Go inside into peace. But our choice of journey is not that. So what does it mean in practice? Although we can talk in abstract about bodhisattvas, bodhisattva levels, Buddhas, Pure Land, and all that kind of stuff that sounds kind of out there, it means that we have lots of karma. And that karma will manifest as people and situations and connections from past lives of all sorts. We are going to face that karma, and that will become the raw material for what we're going to do with our mind to make it pure and peaceful and liberated. Life will happen as it's happened up to now, but our relation to it will be radically changed, radically changed. So depending on what your life is, that's your karma up to now. Depending on the teachings you've met and the advice you're being given and the qualities of the teacher you're meeting and so on, depending on many things, you will put your wish to become enlightened, to help all beings, into practice. And it could be anything, anything. The most famous, often quoted example is Milarepa. What was his practice? Building houses, mainly. Not just that, because after he'd finished all that amazing work of building houses, then he also did practice intensely for 7 years with Mapa before being sent off to practice another 12 years in solitude. But the breakthrough part, the essential part of Milarepa's practice was building houses. So if we leaf through the 6 paramitas, just a moment, which parameter is that? The house building parameter. Builder parameter don't seem to have, you know. We are putting our wish to make ourselves pure and perfect, liberated and peaceful. We are putting that into practice, and that practice de facto means we will engage with people. And that sets a ball rolling, which is immense, because the more, as time goes by, we are engaged in a loving, kind, and helpful way with people, the more we have to offer others, then we're going to meet more people and more situations. And that wealth of situations will be the training ground, the mirror through which we will understand more and more what this mind of ours is, what is its potential, the baggage it carries, the good things, the bad things, and the work we need to do in practice to liberate ourselves. It's very real. It's very real. So then this practice, bodhicitta, could be anything. So usually in either the texts or when lamas give a talk on this, they say it could be anything, but very famously and classically, it is summed up as the 6 paramita. And these 6 we need to know. If you are a bodhisattva and if you are really intent on setting out on this journey, then it's vital stuff. And it's like in our trip to Nepal, you will need an air ticket, you will need baggage, you will need some right clothing, you probably need a map and so on. Some stuff you definitely need. So 6 paramita, and they have names, which we'll come back to again and again. Generosity, right conduct, forbearance, diligence, meditation, prajna, wisdom. So let's start with those. And what we need to have clear from the start, and it's a point I made a few talks ago, is the difference, the enormous difference between a good human being and a bodhisattva. And as mentioned earlier, a few weeks ago, people often say, Buddhists, oh, he's a real bodhisattva, she's a real bodhisattva. And I think, no, they're not. Have they taken the vow? Is their heart set on enlightenment? Do they really know what enlightenment is? Are they prepared? And so on. They're a good human being. And we should take delight in saying what a good human being they are. But we should also respect what bodhisattvas are and not call good human beings bodhisattvas. So why not? It's because a good human being can be generous. Their conduct can be very ethical. They can be a very forbearing human being and a very diligent human being, and they can practice meditation. Many people these days, they do secular mindfulness, and they can be developing wisdom. All they need to do is to go onto Facebook every day. There's endless wisdom there about being a better human being and about the mind and all sorts of things. I mean, it's condensed all of the world's religions into little tiny pithy bits of advice that come at you from every direction every day. So there could be a human being who's a very good human being practicing these 6 qualities, these 6 virtuous qualities. But they're not paramita. Paramita, the word para means far, over there. Mita means shore. So we saw weeks ago, it's often translated as the other shore. And I think when I made the study modules, I sent you one as a backup for this course, then I put other shore in there. But it should be far shore, because it's not the other shore where we're on one shore and there's a shore over there and somehow in between there's water. We're in the water. We're in the water, and at the beginning, we're actually physically in the water, keeping ourselves afloat. That's life. The water's samsara. We're keeping ourselves afloat, surviving. When Dharma and refuge comes along, and the teachings. That's like a boat. We can climb into it. And although we're in the same place, life is completely different. You're not in the water. You're not floundering to survive. You have a structure which is there protecting you and that can be used with the oars, with the sail, to take you to the far shore, which is freedom from suffering. And in the Bodhisattva path, not just you, but you are going to help lots and lots of other people go to that far shore. Safety, land, food, fresh drinking water, everything you need of liberation. So, Paramita, the far shore. As we saw in our 3 types of Dharma person, the first person is not going to the far shore liberation. They're just making their samsara as good as it can be for future lives through virtuous actions, generosity, right conduct, forbearance, and so on. Good human beings practicing right actions. So during the seconds and the split seconds that they are doing the right action with a nice intention, they are making good karma that will nourish their future lives. And then it's finished. However many minutes, hours it lasts, they made that good karma. With our second type of Dharma person, the Shravaka, who is renouncing and exiting samsara, the paramita are there because those good actions are underpinned by commitment, refuge, the longing and the promise to reach liberation, freedom from suffering. And all of the day's work, whether one's actually doing virtue or not, is underpinned by this renunciation of samsara and longing for nirvana. So it says when that commitment or vow is there, whether you're asleep, whether you're awake, doesn't matter. All the time you are producing virtue. And your motivation is one of the main things helping you to get out of suffering. So we have paramita in a sense, but there the far shore isn't the far shore of Buddhahood. It's a closer shore of getting out of suffering yourself, reaching total peace for yourself. So the word paramita is found in the Shravaka teachings. It's there. But in Mahayana teachings, the far shore is nothing less than total, perfect Buddhahood, where everything is as perfect as it can be. There is nothing better, finer, purer, more perfect, more peaceful, more rich in qualities. It is the absolute attainment. So we have our heart set on going there, and the paramita are the practice, putting into practice our wish to get to that far shore. It's the rowing, it's the setting the sail, it's the hard work that takes the boat of Dharma there. So what we'll see is that for the Bodhisattva, what we're talking about really, let's get away from those examples, metaphors. What is it in any moment, and let's take a moment of kindness, of generosity, what is it that makes that moment of giving, and we can make it fun, giving a biscuit. You can give somebody a biscuit and a cup of coffee. Biscuit and a cup of coffee. So that can be an ordinary kind act, or it can be a paramita in the Mahayana sense, where that action that action and how you do it is contributing to your becoming a Buddha and getting out of suffering in the living moment. Not just creating good karma, one cup of tea, one biscuit karma for a future life. Not just contributing to getting you out of samsara because you do it without attachment to anything, without ego, but it is contributing to you becoming like Buddha, nothing less. So we're looking at how we can handle each moment of our life to make that moment contribute. Sometimes amazingly so, sometimes just moments, just hours, can do more work for our Dharma progress than years and years and years. So how to do that? Then that moment becomes paramita. It's something that is actually taking you out, no doubt about it. Not like putting money in the bank, hoping in the future that your investment will look after you when you don't know what will happen in the meantime. I know lots of people who lost their life savings, or like people in Zimbabwe lost their pensions and so on. It's not like karma. What you're doing in the moment has the power in that moment to contribute absolutely to you getting out of suffering and becoming Buddha for everybody. Then and only then can we call that moment paramita moment. So the meaning is very deep, and this is why I said a bodhisattva, somebody who is practicing the paramita, is somebody so special. Not just a good person. A good person is somebody very special, but somebody practicing in the bodhisattva way, paramita, is exceptional, because the wisdom and the strength and the courage and everything that's needed makes that person one of the finest human beings that could possibly exist. So what we see when we come into the, one by one, we'll go through the 6 virtues that become paramita, is that we need 2 things. Prick up your ears. We've got a number. What is going on? What 2 things do you need? Easy to remember. What makes a moment, our cup of tea and biscuit giving moment, paramita, bodhisattva paramita? Greatness and purity. Greatness and purity. And we're going to define those 2 things to understand what we mean by paramita. Greatness means that in that moment, your mind is great. Not small, not a worldly mind, but a great mind. Greatness, purity. The greatness has 3 components to it. What makes it great? First, primordial wisdom, Jhana, makes it great in the sense of it being ennobled. So Jhana, primordial wisdom, ennobles the mind. The second thing that makes it great is the other word for wisdom, prajna. Prajna, deep wisdom, makes it deep and vast. Deep and vast. Great in that sense, great that there's no end to its volume, its scope, the repercussions, and then great in the sense that it is deep, because the mind of the person is a very deep mind in that moment. So prajna makes it great in the sense of vast and deep. Then the third thing, dedication, makes it great in the sense that its benefit will never end. Never end. That's amazing. not just finish there, or a little bit of karma that will play out in some future life, then finished. Never end. The goodness at that moment will never end. Great in that sense. So when we have primordial wisdom, deep wisdom, and dedication, which we'll look into in a second, then this makes our mind in the living moment of practice a great mind. But then beside the greatness, then the mind needs to be also, it's not different, it's just looking at it from a different angle, pure. Pure. So two things make our mind pure in the moment of practice. One is compassion, and the other is shunyata, voidness, emptiness. We could also say, instead of shunyata, voidness, emptiness, could say prajna again, deep wisdom. In this case, it's the same. And we need to work on this, this is our training as a bodhisattva, when in your moment of giving your tea and biscuit, you have primordial wisdom, deep wisdom, dedication, and you have compassion, and you have shunyata. That moment is a break open the shell moment that contributes to you being on the real bodhisattva path and well on the way to becoming Buddha. And that's what we mean by paramita, the practice of the paramita. So let's look a little bit more into what those three aspects of greatness and two aspects of purity are. First, greatness in terms of being ennobled. Ennobled. If we think of noble things, if we think of very pure gems, crystals, if we think of gold, something that is noble, it means in itself, and in this case it means in itself, it could not be any finer, let's use that word, could not be any better or higher, if we use that word, higher. What makes the moment higher is Jhana, primordial wisdom. Now, although this comes first on the list, this is the most difficult one, because you won't really have primordial wisdom. Well, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even the day after tomorrow. It may take a few years. It may take a few lifetimes. And definitive primordial wisdom is what takes us to the first bodhisattva level, beyond samsaric rebirth. But from day one, we are working on it as best we can. And it's only by working on it that we get there. We saw this in the 5 stages of the path. On the path of junction, the path of fusion, second of the 5 major stages of the path. We start conceptually, intellectually, by learning, by reflection, working on what this jhana is. The way it's summed up is as an absence of triplicity. An absence of triplicity. So what's triplicity? Funny word. Well, I think you probably heard more about duality. Duality, subject, object. So triplicity, we add interaction between subject and object. So this is all of enlightenment's about your mind, my mind. So the way our historic, samsaric, conventional mind works is that we've come to have a narrative, tell a story of what comes up each moment in our consciousness, awareness. We split it into 2 sides. This side's me, experiencing, doing, reacting. And that side is other people, life, the world, the universe. Me and other is our basic ignorance, the cause of all the trouble. But were there just me and other, we wouldn't have any karma. The reason we got karma was because me interacted with other. And we can interact with each other kindly, helpfully, or harmfully. And that's where all the story without beginning of our past happened. Subject, object, interaction. So as we learn the deeper teachings on Dharma and about duality and triplicity, we learn that to get free, we must transcend subject, object, and interaction. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to go, because you might need to wait a long time if you wait for those to go. The habit of feeling like me as opposed to others, even down to such subtle split-second thoughts and feelings and the way everything works in our mind. That age-old habit is so deeply enrooted. If we wait for the actual perception of me and other and interaction to go, it might never happen. It can still be there, the age-old habit, but we can transcend it. We can see through the fabric of the illusion that it's created, how we're telling blah, 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 the story of me, and this is me, and I'm experiencing this, and then the story of them, yeah, he's not fair. All of the narrative, we can see it. We can see how it shapes our lives, other people's lives, and we can not get drawn into it, not get involved with it, but start to become familiar with the space of mind in which it all takes place. Space is always there. And then all of a sudden your thoughts are saying yap, 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 blah, blah, blah. And then after about 5 minutes of yap, 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 blah, 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 you're crying your eyes out because it's that kind of yapping, blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes you quickly switch on Facebook and you read some beautiful bit of vivid truth about it, and then you go ha 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 ha. So then you're in ha 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 blah blah blah, and you're saying, oh yes, you need to laugh to become Buddha, or you read Trungpa Rinpoche, it's like falling out of an airplane, bad news, there's no ground, good news, no parachute, good news, there's no ground. Or you read something like that, and you're telling yourself a story, stories and stories and endless stories. So you just learn to be with the space and to become more aware of those stories, of other, of self, of action, interaction. And then in that space, with time, with meditation, with learning of Madhyamaka, middle way philosophy, and so on, then we will find the blessing of the Buddhas, the Gurus, the lineage, which is peace, which is deep and beautiful, compassionate love, and which is connection with the heart of what we truly are, not these illusory stories we weave through a mind's mental dialogue. Triplicity. So we ennoble the moment of giving so what's happening now? We're in this moment of generosity with a cup of tea and a biscuit. Now, we don't need to be very kind of Tibetan, and actually Tibetans stick their tongue out to show sincerity. It's not very polite in the West, but we don't need to like this and offering a cup of tea. I don't know if you know Tibetans or you've seen them do this. It's very nice. It's very nice. But we don't need to do that. We can just be very ordinary, just giving George or Mildred their cup of tea and a biscuit. They don't know what's going on. But in ourselves, we know that all the way we're telling the story of, oh, I'm treating them really nice. I gave them my best tea and my loveliest cups. And in fact, those were the biscuits I was saving for this afternoon, but never mind, I'm being a very kind Ken. Or the story we're talking about, us or them, or, I hope they finish their biscuits quickly and get off now, because whatever story we're telling ourselves, we see the triplicity of it. We remind ourselves, we're reminded of the space. And if possible, we are in that space. And then because in that space, it all becomes much more like a dream or like an illusion. Illusory you, giving illusory coffee and biscuit to an illusory person. Somehow this helps the actual experience move towards a real transcendence of triplicity. And bit by bit we get there. So the more we transcend triplicity, the more noble our mind is. And actually that space in which all the narrative happens, there is nothing deeper than that space. There's not another space or another dimension. That space takes on more qualities as we get enlightened. But it's like gold. It cannot be more noble than that, or like a diamond. That diamond space, that gold space, beyond the feelings and the thoughts, the peace. The presence of that makes the action noble and hence great in itself just by that. But to that jhana, the primordial wisdom, non-triplicity, then we add the greatness of prajna. You could pronounce that word differently. Pranja, prajna. There's about 4 or 5 ways of saying it. Nobody knows. Sanskrit died as a language, and it probably varied from region to region anyway. But let's say prajna. People say that these days. So there, whereas the absence of triplicity, the space of non-duality, is more the ultimate truth of the matter. In the relative truth of the matter, there you are. There's Ken, just made a cup of tea, just got the biscuits out the tin. And in your karma, there's your guests who are there. We are facing our relative reality. It's on screen. That is where the raw material for our journey to enlightenment, not just on our cushion. Cushion is practice. You practice, you train in order for the real thing. So now prajna deals with the relative reality. This is deeply reinforced by our Buddhist reflections on who we are, what our relationship with other beings is, past mothers, past parents, past friends, future Buddhas, and where we are in this moment in our karma. It's reinforced by that kind of knowledge about relative reality and karma. And it's reinforced by our prayers. And if we're doing them, Vajrayana practices, like Chinrezig practice. So let's take the Mahayana level first. So although we're giving a cup of coffee and a biscuit, we are in our heart through the power of prayers, maybe without even thinking the words, thinking just now, I'm giving a cup of coffee and a biscuit. But may I give all sentient beings, my past best friends and parents, and especially those suffering now in the lower realms. May I give them all the material resources, the food, the drink, the shelter. May I be a friend for them, like in the Bodhisattva verses we read. May I be a bridge for those who need a bridge. May I be a doctor for those who need a doctor. May I be a boat for those who need a boat. Whatever beings need, and not just materially, but may I give them Dharma. May I help them along their Dharma path. May I support them through their own Dharma practice. So all of these good intentions make the mind very vast, because we are thinking of enlightenment, which is endless, and we're bringing them to Buddhahood, all the Buddha's 32 and 80 special qualities, and everything Buddha is, and our knowledge of the 6 realms of samsara, and our heartfelt intention, so that in that moment of the cup of tea, our prayers and our knowledge, prajna, make it very, very, very vast. And if we can, while we're having those pure thoughts and intentions on a relative level, we are seeing the dreamlike nature from the non-triplistic jhana. And then at the beginning, at least, when it's over, when you've safely delivered your cup of tea with prajna, pragana, and jhana, then we dedicate the goodness. That moment that you just lived through of non-duality, being at peace, and a vast mind longing for everybody in deep care to be well and to reach enlightenment, we share it with all beings, dedication. So you know about dedication. It's said it's like taking a drop of water that would normally dry up very quickly and putting it in the ocean, and then it never dries up. Its goodness is shared. So we dedicate whatever was good to all beings. So again, our mind is looking now to the future with two objectives: enlightenment for all beings, because we're dedicating towards enlightenment, and all beings, endless sentient beings. So it's a very big mind, but it's a mind that has sealed the action and made the goodness last forever. Contribute to your own bodhisattva wealth in the two accumulations, so that you will have more and more to offer other beings through your own bodhisattva journey. So those three things make the moment great. Ultimate truth great, jhana, non-triplicity. Relative truth great, prajna. And dedication. But beside being great, then it needs to be pure. And pure action is something, it's the most beautiful apprenticeship we can undertake. Generally in samsara, we mess up. We act, it's called karma, but somewhere along the line, if it's not harmful, it's not that pure. And often ego comes into it. And so although we've made good karma, it's good ego karma, not so helpful. So how do we make it pure? Two things. One is compassion. So I can't say in a few words. I've mentioned this many times. We have a whole training in awakening loving kindness. And then loving kindness becomes compassion. We have meditations where we develop the reality of loving kindness and compassion. And then compassion has three levels that are the counterparts of the three types of suffering. We have compassion towards evident suffering when it hurts. We have compassion towards the causes of suffering when people aren't hurting, but they're creating causes of their own future suffering. And we have the deepest compassion because people are cut off from their own perfect Buddha mind. They don't see who they really are. They're caught up in this worldly narrative. So when those three levels of compassion are there, so here we are with our cup of coffee and our biscuit, and so without being, how can you say, patronizing, without putting yourself on a pedestal or anyway, it's deep and natural love for the person you're offering to. Seeing them as someone who's been so kind to you in past lives, so kind you could never repay all the good things they've done for you. And then seeing them as a future Buddha, you have the honor, the privilege of offering coffee and a biscuit to someone who one day will benefit hundreds, thousands of beings. And so our compassion makes that moment pure. The compassion, how can you say, compassion and egotism can't coexist. It's like light and dark. When there is compassion, then ego can't be there. That's what makes it pure. Ego-based action keeps us in samsara. Ego-less action gets us out. It's the purity. So pure love for our fellow beings. And indeed for ourselves, because we're honoring our own Buddha nature, which is the same as the other person. There's no difference. So compassion is there as one aspect of purity. And then the second aspect of purity is shunyata, voidness. And we can see this in many ways through different teachings, but very often it talks about the 4 seals or the 4 stamps of voidness that need to be there. It's like something coming out of a factory and it goes through the testers, and tester number 1 puts his stamp on it, says approved. The number 2, buff, a stamp, and we need 4 stamps. And if all 4 stamps are there, you can say, oh yeah, the shunyata was pretty good in that moment. So it's not quite the same as triplicity. It's very similar, but our first stamp is on the voidness of the giver. The voidness of the giver's presence, let's say body. Because you're there with hands and a body and a cup of tea, and everything that's happening physically seems very real to us historically. So we have all those shunyata teachings from Middle Way and from all the different schools that analyze, what is a cup, what is coffee, what is a hand, and we see the shunyata of it. So the material reality that's there, first stamp off. Yes, it's there, but it's like a dream. It's like a mirage. It's like a conjuration. It's not that it's not there. Shunyata, avoidance, doesn't mean it's not there. It means it's there through interdependence. If you know the interdependence, you know shunyata. The physical reality, stamp number 1. Stamp number 2, the mind of the giver, your mind, which we can make very solid sometimes. So when we look into mind, we try and find mind. Nobody did. Nobody did. We should have a big reward. It's like somebody, Uri Geller time, they put that spoon inside a glass vacuum and offered a big amount of money to anybody who could bend it without actually getting to it. I don't think anybody bent it. Nobody could. So anyway, our mind, which we can make very solid, then we look for it, we find nothing there. But interdependence, but nothing you can pin down and say, that's it. This is me. This is my mind. It's just, I want to speak French, insaisissable. It's an unfixable, undefinable, insaisissable, ever-changing flow of thoughts, feelings, experiences, and so on and so on. So the stamp number 2, the mind of the doer, is shunyata, interdependence. Doesn't exist as something fixed, exists in its interdependent, relative, impermanent nature. Stamp number 3, the receiver. So we tend through our projections to think of other people in a very fixed way, fixed assumptions, projections, and so on. We need to realize simply that. Whatever the other person manifests to us as, well, that's our subjective experience of that person. Realizing the interdependence of that subjectivity, the seal of voidness on the person we're giving our cup of coffee to. So far we've had 3 of our 4 seals. The physical reality, the mind of the giver, the receiver. Now number 4 is the result we're aiming for, Buddhahood. So the shunyata of Buddhahood. Now that's a deep topic, I'm not going there. But that Buddhahood is not something fixed, whatever we think it is at the moment, for sure it's not that. That's the best we can do, and thank goodness for that, and it will help us along the way. But it's like you're off on your journey now. You're going to Nepal, and you might have read about it. But when you actually get there, the smells and the experience and everything will be, wow, gosh, this is what it's really like. But without that idea of what it might be like, we would never have got there in the first place. So, of course, we have a relatively true, relatively honest appreciation of Buddhahood. But when it really happens, when we get there, it won't be anything like this idea we have just now. So we need to recognize the interdependence. Again, shunyata is always interdependence. The interdependence that makes our current notion of the Buddhahood we want what it is. And to know that it's not quite like that. When all four seals are there, then in that moment, then there is the purity through shunyata. And we need to learn to blend this loving compassion with the purity of shunyata. And then the moment is pure. Now, these are all, of course, huge asks of you and of me. And nobody expects this to happen overnight. Excuse me. I'm giving myself a cup of coffee. But we have in our Buddhist training, whichever one you're on, and if, for instance, Mahamudra training, everything is there to bring the shunyata, to bring the compassion into place, to help you towards jhana, primordial wisdom, towards the prajna, the relative wisdom, and towards the dedication. We are learning. And at first we'll stumble, we'll make mistakes, but we will get it right. We will get it right. And that will be wonderful. So practice, bodhicitta, is training in those things. Now that's the Mahayana version. There's a Vajrayana version, which is what Vajrayana does. Vajrayana, tantric practice, puts a face on Mahayana, almost literally. So, and in Vajrayana, the key difference is that you have a guru. So those same things are there, but we put a face on them. And there are various sort of levels of face depending on where you are in Vajrayana, how deep your practice experience has taken you, that your own guru will advise you on. For instance, when we're doing guru yoga practice, then everyone and everything becomes the guru. We have amazing stories from the life stories of lives and liberations of our Kagyu forefathers, where when they're practicing guru yoga really intently, they end up prostrating to dogs and to any phenomena they meet, because this could be the manifestation of my guru. In Naropa's story, it would be hilarious if it wasn't so sad, because his guru manifests as all sorts of unlikely things. He comes across a couple, they're chopping up a corpse they've just killed. I mean, for a Buddhist person, this is horrible. And they say, oh, great, come, we need a hand with this. Can you come over here? And he says, what? No, I'm not getting involved with that. Then the whole thing disappears into rainbow light. And they say, well, that was your guru, but you missed it again. Blast. And like this, to sort of break through so many preconceptions at the speed of light, amazing things can happen outside the Buddhist norm in the Vajrayana path. So, but at one point, it was just to say, we are seeing the guru everywhere, because guru means teacher. A teacher is only a teacher if we learn. And we can learn from everything, from any moment. Whether it's a lama sitting on a cushion, whether it's a butterfly on a leaf, whether it's somebody being nasty to us, we can learn. If you can learn, then what you're learning from is your teacher. And if your learning has been properly trained, so you know where you're going, getting rid of the poisons from your mind, you're going to a mind that's pure and kind. So you're learning in that sense. Then everything becomes your guru. Everyone becomes your guru. So Guru Yoga time, we do that. When we do Chinrezig practice, when we finish, then we go off into life. We are Chinrezig. The other person's Chinrezig. So when you're giving your cup of coffee, it is Chinrezig giving to a Chinrezig for the benefit of all beings. The sound of the spoon tinkling in the cup is Om Mani Padme Hum. All sound is the mantra. Everything that's happening in your mind, where we're going beyond triplicity, is the mind of Chinrezig. We have so many different instructions. And then in deeper tantric work, we go from that kind of level of things to an energetic level of things, where we are, every moment is a movement of energy on all sorts of level. So depending on where you're at, you will get instructions about making your moment of cup of coffee biscuit generosity fit with your Vajrayana practice. There's no one instruction there. Vajrayana is by its very nature an intimate thing between a teacher and their disciple. So now, having looked briefly at this, there we zoomed into what makes Paramita Paramita, what makes a moment of action as life comes to you, as we live our life, what makes it something that will get you out to Buddhahood. We just saw that. We zoomed in on that. Now we'll zoom back to a more classical teaching about, okay, practice can be anything. Practice bodhicitta can be anything that helps you to enlightenment. And with those key qualities of greatness and purity. But traditionally, it is embodied as the 6 paramita. And it starts with the 6 paramita. We need to know what they are. You need to know that by heart. The names can vary in English. Generosity, that's okay. Most people stick with that. The second one, sometimes it's called morality, ethics. I use right conduct for linguistic and historical reasons because of the Tibetan word and its definition in the dictionary is right conduct, number 2. Number 3, many people say patience. I don't like that because for me in English language, patience is kind of an ability to sit there and put up with it. It's kind of, you're in a waiting room and you might have to wait 2 hours. But you're patient. You can just sit there and let time go by. That kind of patience is not what it means at all. It's forbearance is the word I use because it has the word bear, carry. And it's defined in the scriptures as an ability to cope. You can bear it, you can carry it, you can manage that much. And of course, this will grow. At first, we can't cope with much. We can't carry much. But the more we become strong, the more we can cope with more challenging situations, the more powerful the light in the mirror that comes back to us from life shows us who we are. We can cope with it. So forbearance is number 3. Then number 4 is diligence. Some people call it effort, right effort or enthusiasm. But diligence is actually perfect from a linguist point of view. Diligence is spot on when we go back to the etymology and the dictionaries. Diligence. Number 5 is meditation. Now the word here we get complicated because the word is Jhana, which means concentration, meditation, absorption. So Jhana. And we could just say meditation is good enough. Meditation paramita. And then the 6th one, the very famous one, is prajna paramita, paramita of wisdom, deep wisdom. And over the coming weeks, we'll be looking at each of these more or less 1 week each, 2 sessions on Prajna Paramita, because it is the deepest. So the first thing the text said is there are definitely 6, not 5, not 7, definitely 6. And this is because we're looking at our mind and what we're going to do with it between now and enlightenment. And when you look at mind and see what's there, there are definitely those 6 areas. There's not another one that we've not discovered to be added to it. And there's definitely, we can't take away any one of those in the work we have to do, our practice, bodhicitta, the actual things we need to do in life. We can't take away one and become Buddha. You know, it's like a car. You've got wheels, you've got the chassis, you've got a motor, you've got steering wheel, you've got some essential parts. So they're the essential parts. Definitely 6. And then what my teachers told me, and I found very nice, let's say, because of the way they phrased it. They said, look, there are 6 things. You can relate to them. Because when we think about becoming Buddha, I've not got a clue what goes on in your head, what kind of images come, you know, whether you see glowing Buddhas or you have an idea that enlightenment is sort of whatever it is, light, space, or something. It's very hard for us. But they say, let's forget all that for the moment. Just look at very real qualities. First, generosity. Can you not see the beauty of being kinder and kinder, more and more there for all beings, and letting go the me, the I, the narrowness, the clinging, the greed, the fear of letting go? So when that's perfect generosity. Right conduct means you don't hurt anybody anymore. And you learn how to conduct your life in the most beneficial, kind, caring way possible. Don't you want that? Do you want the opposite? Of course not. So when that's perfect, you have perfect right conduct. Forbearance means you can cope. You don't get upset when you're helping other beings through being generous, through being right conduct. It doesn't break you, doesn't make you upset, doesn't disappoint you. You can cope with more and more the reality of helping others, which is so difficult. Don't you want to be able to cope with all of the caring situations you meet until it's perfect? Of course you do. And diligence, where you have a joy in practicing Dharma. You can't get enough of it because it's so true. It is so meaningful and valuable and helpful. And so we get rid of our laziness and investing so much energy in trivial pursuits, and we invest heavily in Dharma. Wouldn't you want your whole life to be an awakening or more awakening to Dharma? Meditation is no more than mastering your own wild mind. Do you want it to be wild and take you where it's taken you? Or do you want your mind to be a perfect vehicle for love and for wisdom? And so you need to meditate, to master it, to bring it to peace. Don't you want that to be perfect? And so you get perfect meditation. And then wisdom. Nobody wants to be stupid. We want to be wise, not just in the sense of knowledge. We want to be really savvy about who we are, who everyone is, how life works. Do you want to be in the dark, or do you want to be wise? Of course. So when all of these 6 very, very real aspects of our being are perfect, you're Buddha. You're Buddha whether you know the word Buddha or not. You're Buddha whether you like it or not. When you're perfectly generous and perfect conduct and so on. This is our best definition of when we say, I want to become Buddha to help all beings become Buddha. What do we mean by Buddha? These six valuable areas of our being are perfect. So we need to know there are 6. Then we need to know there are 36. And it sounds like scholars stuff, but it really, really isn't. Because those 6 now, you know the names. You can't really be generous until your generosity is wise. Prajna. You can't really be perfectly generous until your generosity is ethical. You can't really be generous as much as you could be until you are forbearing and so on. So generosity needs the other 5 paramitas. So we get generosity of generosity, right conduct of generosity. We get the forbearance of generosity, diligence of generosity, meditation backing up generosity, and the wisdom of generosity. That's very true. Your generosity won't be perfect until the other 5 are there. And the same with the right conduct. Your conduct won't be perfect conduct until it's wise, until it has the depth of the mastered mind of meditation, and so on. So actually, in the practice, we can't separate generosity from the others. We need to know they are interactive. There's a synergy that happens. And from that point of view, we have 36 aspects. So that's the numbers. And then we need to know they're in an order, and it's not just haphazard. We need to be, as we're becoming generous, more and more generous of spirit, and we are there giving ourselves to other people, involved with other people, then the need for ethics, right conduct, becomes more and more evident. As we develop a right and pure conduct, then the need for forbearance, because people are ungrateful, people mess up, and our own plans that we thought might help them as we're learning to be bodhisattvas don't work, we need to be forbearing. There's a definite need for it. And then once we are forbearing, then we are dealing with difficulties. That's what forbearance means. And we need to keep our Dharma joy. So there's a need to develop diligence, which is Dharma joy. We need that Dharma joy and effort to be able to give ourselves to meditation, number 5, because it's a long and boring work sitting on your butt, mastering your mind. It's not that straightforward. It takes a wee while. And so we need to be forbearing, we need to be diligent, and so on, in order to really meditate effectively. And then without meditation, there's no way that prajna, the deep wisdom, will really come. No way. It's an inner thing that makes you a wise person. So there is a definite order to them in terms of need. Also, there's a definite order in terms of what is the easiest. The easiest is to be more and more generous. When we come to see what right conduct really means, that's not quite so easy. It's more subtle. And then forbearance is even more subtle, and diligence. So we're going from gross to the most subtle, from the easiest to the hardest. So there is a natural order to the Paramita. So like that, and you have it in the backup document, module 11 from my study course, you'll see all of that traditionally presented according to the teachings of Gampopa. It's in the section called An Overview of the 6 Paramita. It deals with the number, the order, and those sorts of things. So that's the end of the talk time for today. And next week, we'll go into the first, and maybe also some of the second of the Paramita, generosity. So thank you all very, 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 very much. I hope it wasn't too technical. I hope it was helpful. But anyway, whatever was good, let's dedicate now. And then we have a few moments for feedback and for questions. Sonam diye tamche zikpane, topnenye pedranam pamchene, je ganachi palak truk paye, sipit sole drowa drowarisho. Jangchob Semcho Rinpoche, Ma Jepanam, Je Jorji, Jepan Nyampa Me Patan, Kongne, Kongdo, Belwarasho.